realizing that I left the aircon on throughout this entire video and it's going to sound. So I'm gonna have music in this video. Hello and welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today we're going to do part 2 of this 2-part series thing I've got going on regarding book-to-screen adaptations. Last week we did the worst book-to-screen adaptations and today we're doing the best. So it's happy and fun and less negativity. Yay! Like I promised last week, the best list is going to be comprised of 2 parts. This is 4. I don't know how to count. The first part of the list will be adaptations that I've watched and I've really liked, but I haven't read the original book. And for the second part, I feel like I can exude a little bit more authority because they are adaptations that I've watched and I've read the original books of. For now, we're gonna dive into books that I haven't read, but I've watched the adaptations of and I've really enjoyed. First book-to-screen adaptation that I really loved would be The Duff, and this was such a pleasant surprise. I'd always seen the book on the shelves and never had the interest to pick it up. I think my friend read it, so she was the one who dragged me into it. She's like, we have to watch it because it's Robbie Amell. The trailers make it look like it's a really basic rom-com that's not funny at all. And then I came away really liking the movie. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. So The Duff stands for Designated Ugly Fat Friend, and it's a high school rom-com about this girl who realizes that in her group of friends, she's the designated ugly fat friend. And I loved like this one scene when she realizes, we were Charlie's Angels for Halloween. Why was I bossly? There were 3 angels. I loved Mae Whitman's performance in this. She just sold the whole thing. Surprisingly, the love interest wasn't just this like big hunk of handsome stone. He was also very charming and they had really good chemistry and it was just an enjoyable movie. I've watched it numerous times and I've constantly enjoyed watching it. The second one on my list would be one of the more recent adaptations and it would be The Haunting of Hill House. So this is based off of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and I think from what I've heard from my friends, this is so different from the book. It's completely different. I think they retain the lore and a couple of names, but the relationships, the story itself is completely different. The Haunting of Hill House is about the Crane family, and they used to live in this place called Hill House. Something happened all these years ago, and we don't know why, but at the beginning of the series, we just know that they had to leave in a hurry. This TV show takes place in the past and present, so you have the adult children now trying to struggle with their demons from when they were kids and figuring out what exactly happened, forcing them to confront Hill House at the very end. And I really liked how it starts at the end of a stereotypical movie, because the ending of a horror movie would be they escape the haunted house and that's the ending. This series starts with that. They escape and then you're like, that's done, now what? So you sort of trace your way back into the story and then at the same time deal with them in the future and see the aftermath of the haunting. And I just really enjoyed it. I was scared to bits. I like that it wasn't just a horror story. A lot of the series detractors say that that's what they didn't like about it, is that it wasn't horror enough. But I like that there was this family story behind them. And of course, me, I'm a sucker for big family stories. I only have 1 sibling, so watching a TV show about all these siblings interacting and twins, you guys know I love twins as a trope. That story made me go on Reddit for the first time. I've always steered clear of Reddit because I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go down like a rabbit hole. I don't read lots of trolls, what have you. At the end of the show, I was like, must search Reddit for more theories, must know more about this TV show, and I loved it so much, and I can't wait for season 2. Season 2 will have nothing to do with the Crane family. Instead, it's going to be called The Haunting of Bly Manor, and it's going to be based off of The Turn of the Screw. I've been trying to pluck up the courage to listen to that audiobook, and so far not yet, but maybe when the first trailer comes out, I'll finally get down and listen to that audiobook. Coming in at number 3 is still one of my favorites from over 12 years ago, and I've never picked up the book because, like they said, it's grossly different from the movie, but I enjoy the film so much, and that would be Stardust, based on Stardust by Neil Gaiman. So Stardust is a fantasy film that I'm just now remembering has Ben Barnes. Reason number 1000 why I love this film even more. But Stardust is a fantasy movie and it's set in a world where there's a literal wall dividing the magical world and the normal world. And this guy named Tristan crosses over to find a fallen star. Now the fallen star falls and she's a human, and they go on this adventure with like pirates and witches and magic and kings and sorcerers, and it's just so fun. It's such a good fantasy film. Honestly, the only fault this movie had would be Claire Danes. I've still not forgiven her for her comments on the Philippines all those years ago, but also because she does a terrible English accent. You know she's not British, so it's so contrived. Other than that, I love the movie. Oh my god, Michelle Pfeiffer as a villain. Yes! I watched it earlier this year when I was sick, and you know when you're sad because you're sick, you're like, and then I watched it and I go, I'm happy now. Like, I love it so much. It's on Netflix still, I think. So go ahead and watch that if you want some like fantasy fun. Genuinely not even just one of my favorite book to screen adaptations, but one of my favorite films to like cheer me up. The last adaptation on the first part of my list, aka books I haven't read but have watched the adaptations of, would be The White Queen, The White Princess, and all those TV shows in the Philippa Gregory cinematic universe, which I did not know existed. So Philippa Gregory is like this big shot when it comes to historical royal fiction, specifically English royal fiction. So apparently there are these mini-series that Stars, I think is the network, Stars and BBC have produced. They're in their own little cinematic universe where everything's canon, but the actors are different and the series itself have different names, and I didn't know that it existed until this year. The first series in the universe is The White Queen, and that takes place during the Wars of the Roses, which was a war between the houses of York and Lancaster for the throne. Fun fact, it was what Game of Thrones was based after. That's why York and Lannister sounds like Stark and Nope, I messed that up. Houses of York and Lancaster, the real ones, sound like Stark and Lannister, the fake Game of Thrones one. So that's what it was based off of. Then after The White Queen, there's The White Princess, which is about her daughter. And the third series is what I'm watching now, and it's The Spanish Princess, and it's the next generation. It's about Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII. It's terribly inaccurate, but it's fun. And I mean, with a lot of historical period dramas these days, asking them to be good watching fare would be enough. It can't ask them to be accurate. That's just asking too much of them now. As long as it's well made, well directed, well written, it's good fun. The White Queen, The White Princess, and The Spanish Princess. I posted on IG stories that I was watching The Spanish Princess, and like a lot of girls, because I posted a picture of shirtless Henry VIII, they were like, what show is this? And I'm like, I got you. Moving on to the second part of the list, and these are books that I have read and I love the adaptations of. Starting off with the franchise members of this list, I want to start off with Mockingjay, which is based off of the third Hunger Games book by Suzanne Collins. But this is the weird thing. I don't love Mockingjay the film. I just think it's a really good adaptation, but it's not by any means one of my favorite book to screen adaptations. I just think it's one of the best, because Mockingjay the book was terrible. And the fact that they were able to stretch it out over 2 movies and make 2 fairly decent movies was a feat. One of the mistakes I think that Suzanne Collins did for the third book is that the Hunger Games are strictly first person. Katniss is underground for the entirety, 3/4 of Mockingjay. Ergo, 3/4 of the book, you're just underground, trapped in a bunker. You don't know what's going on in the outside world, and you get things through messages, and you don't experience it firsthand until about the last quarter of the book. So for the movie to have all these alternating points of view, I really liked. I just think they did a very good job. Again, like I said last week, The Hunger Games will never be my favorite movie franchise or book to screen adaptation ever, but I think they did a fairly good job of adapting this terrible book into a somewhat passable movie. The next favorite adaptation on my list, and with the poster behind me, it's a wonder I haven't mentioned it so far, but it would be the Harry Potter movies, specifically the first Deathly Hallows and the first 2 films, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm aware that everyone has their favorite films. I do love the majority of the films, but I just wanted to focus on the 3 that I mentioned because they were just the best adaptations in my opinion. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows one, like Mockingjay, it took a very boring manuscript and made it into something workable for the screen. When it was announced that Deathly Hallows was going to be made into 2 films, I was like, so the first movie would just be them camping for days and months on end? How are you gonna make that exciting? But they did by building up the already established relationship of Harry, Ron, and Hermione, just adding these little moments like at Godric's Hollow. I thought they wouldn't be able to capture that heart-wrenching moment when Harry stands at his parents' grave, or even unpopular opinion, a lot of people found it corny. I really liked the dancing scene between Harry and Hermione because it wasn't even supposed to be romantic in my opinion. It was just these 2 kids who literally believe that the world is ending and they have no nowhere to turn and they're completely lost. And to me, it's just this so bittersweet moment when Harry's like, world shot to hell, let's just try to dance. But then they end up cheering themselves up by dancing. So even those little touches in the movie. And with the first two, I just think, was it the youth? Was it the fact that it was the first two movies of the franchise? But I really loved it. I think it had the most magic and wonder, and the magic in the movies matched the magic that you saw in the books. I mean, the only thing I can fault the first movie for was not having the potions puzzle. The other movies, while they were still amazing and I still love them, I just don't think they matched the level of magic and awe and wonder that you found in the books, particularly Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix. How do you cut out an entire character completely? This is just turning into a Harry Potter rant, which I might say for another video. Down to the last two movies on this list. The next movie we have is another recent one, and it would be Crazy Rich Asians, based on the book by Kevin Kwan. It's a little bit different from the other movies on this list because there were so many changes to the original material, but every change they did I completely agreed with and further served the story. How the movie ended 10 times better than how the book ended. The last scene before Coldplay's Yellow comes on, that is a good non-spoilery way of saying it. I just like gasped aloud in the theater because I found it so good. If you've been living under a rock, Crazy Rich Asians is about this girl named Rachel Chu. He has a boyfriend named Nicholas Young, and they've been dating for about 2-3 years. I think in the book he's like, you want to come home with me to Singapore for the summer? And then she comes home and she's like, oh my god, your parents are rich. Hence the title, Crazy Rich Asians. While the book highlighted these crazy spending habits of these billionaires, gazillionaires in Asia, the movie highlighted the relationships and the Asian culture, which again, if you're bringing it to an international audience, is always appreciated. I love the movie. I remember the last time I watched it, my friend and I went to Singapore. Every day we would go to different tourist spots, come home, watch the movie because it was available in the hotel. The next day we'd be like, okay, now let's go there. Clearly a favorite of ours. And I could go on and on about how much I love this movie, but just watch my review. The last favorite book to screen adaptation I have, it would be The Fault in Our Stars, based on the book by John Green. The Fault in Our Stars is a story about two teenagers who fall in love who are also both battling cancer. I thought it was a pretty faithful adaptation of the book for 1 second. I read the book, sure, I felt glum at the right parts, happy in the right parts, but I didn't really feel an attachment to the characters. I thought the movie really did well on its casting. It made Gus and Hazel Grace so relatable and so likable. It was one of the first films since Titanic that I cried. Like, I watched it with my best friend and I remember we both were not a fan of like showing emotion that way to each other. So she just brought like a box of Kleenex and we weren't looking at each other in the movie theater and we were just passing it back and forth like It was a really good adaptation for me and I loved the music. I remember in 2014 the soundtrack was on loop, on blast 24/7. In the universe of YA book to film adaptations, I think it's one of the most well done for me. What a heavy movie to end on. This was supposed to be happy. But that about does it for my favorite, or what I consider the best book to screen adaptations. Leave a comment down below which are your personal favorites. If I didn't mention them, go ahead and recommend them. If you disagree with any that I put down, it's a free world. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures. On Twitter, I'm at Salva Villarasa, and on Instagram, I'm at Cuckoo for Books, but also I'm at Salva Villarasa. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye, guys!